Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. THQ Nordic celebrated the 10th year anniversary of their company and they showed us a lot of gameplay of various titles which are being published by them. One of those games is the sequel to Elex, an open world RPG from 2017 by Piranha Bytes. A game that you might be familiar with if you're following my channel. Elex 2 has been announced a couple of months ago and we had some early gameplay footage and a CGI trailer. Now we got a story trailer, new CGI trailer, and more importantly a lot of new gameplay footage from a couple of YouTube channels that got the chance to try out the beta version of the game, such as FextraLife. Almost all footage that I'll be using in this video is from FextraLife's stream on Twitch, by the way, so all credits goes to him. Anyway, we'll try to analyze what I consider to be the most important aspect of the new gameplay footage, as well as the story trailer. So let's dig right in. I really want to talk about the beginning of the game, which is being featured here. As we have learned in the previous video about Elex 2, Jax, the main character in the game, was exiled after the events of Elex 1. The intro cutscene in Elex 2 is showing Jax hunting and returning to his shack in the woods. And right after that, the aliens finally arrived and started terraforming the land of Megalan. Jax barely survived and he was beat in the process, rendering him physically weaker. He basically caught a disease from dead bites. That was to be expected because you have to start as a fresh character somehow, which is indeed more awkward to pull off with a pre-made character in RPGs compared to being able to make your own character. However, this goes beyond the excuse for starting as a fresh character because Jax is affected by this substance and he feels like it's changing him.
Yes, you were bitten by one of those creatures. Looks like it infected you. Some kind of disease.
That's obviously Dark Elex, which was mentioned before, and it's going to affect the whole story of Elex 2 in a big way, I assume. If you didn't notice, it seems like the budget for cutscenes and the CGI is bigger than ever when it comes to Piranha Bytes games. While I think that's great, I just hope the majority of the budget for the game went into the actual gameplay. Anyway, Jax is rescued by a guy named Adam and he has a little chat with him about the current events. The land of Karakis was mentioned in their dialogue, which is the beginning area of Elex 2. Here's a fun fact about the beginning area of Elex 2. This place was actually referenced in one of the letters in Elex 1, the mission letter about Baxter that you could find in William's shack in the fort. So we had some foreshadowing about this land. By the way, Baxter was a former leader of the Outlaws and he was described as a very bad guy. So I think there is a strong chance that we're going to see him in Elex 2. This is also the first time when Jax talks about his son, Dex. He is supposed to be with some berserkers in the vicinity and one of your first quests is to go and get him. In the meantime, Adam proposes you a plan to form a separate faction called 6 Power, focused on stopping the alien invasion. Oh yeah, and you also get a jetpack from him.
Oh, fuck!
This would be a good time to start talking about the gameplay in general. If I would have to sum up my initial impressions about the early gameplay from this beta footage, I would use the word smoother, or smoother than Elex 1 in particular. The gameplay looks a lot smoother in general compared to Elex 1, which had a lot of twitchy movements and stiff controls. I can't say for sure that the gameplay feels smoother because I didn't play it myself, but it definitely looks smoother. The way that Jax moves and interacts with the world seems a lot smoother. Even in combat you can see the same results. But does that mean the jank is gone? Well, no it's not. The gameplay still looks like it has a certain dose of that infamous Euro jank, and if you can't deal with that, you probably won't like the game. On a more serious note, the beginning area looks really fun to explore because you can immediately put your jetpack to good use. And knowing how Piranha Bytes games reward exploration, I don't have a single reason to believe that Elex 2 will be different. The map looks really open right from the beginning, which was to be expected. It's an open world RPG in every sense of the word. Now let's talk about the combat for a second. The first enemy you're going to encounter is reminiscent of the first enemy in Elex 1, but instead of fighting a mass rat, you're going to fight some weak bloodclaws. Piranha Bytes always had a similar approach to designing weaker enemies of the same species for making seamless tutorial areas. Fextra was playing on the normal difficulty, and the changes in combat seems to offer a more accessible experience for beginners. Not because the creatures are doing less damage compared to Elex 1, but because it seems a lot easier to avoid attacks by just observing the enemy attack patterns. It all comes down to that smoother feel in general. And again, don't trust me on this because I have to try it out for myself before I properly judge the gameplay experience. In one thing I'm certain though, and that will be the usage of stamina for Jax and the enemies. This time around, the stamina on enemies seem to be equally important as your stamina, which was not the case in the first game. That was probably the plan for the first game as well, but something went terribly wrong. Enemies seem to get stunned a lot when their stamina is low, which is how it should work. The only thing related to combat which kinda bothers me is the same sound effect which plays upon impact.
Dude, it sounds like I'm hitting a car.
I don't think it's a bad sound effect, but it's just being overused. I mean, is it really that hard to have at least a couple of different sound effects upon hits? Depending on the enemy type at least. That would definitely improve the combat experience in general, if you ask me. Don't worry about the difficulty though, because Elex 2 seems to be as brutal as Elex 1. Fextra tried to fight a swarm spider with a skull icon and he was dead in a couple of hits, even though he was playing on the normal difficulty. Like I said in my previous Elex 1 video, the difficulty setting doesn't really matter a lot in the beginning of the game, because your character in Piranha Bytes games is always extremely weak, which never fails to create a great sense of progression, at least in Piranha Bytes games. Elex 2 seems to continue that tradition. And that brings us to the actual character progression, or at least everything that I could see about it in this little segment of FextraLife's gameplay. Your attributes now clearly show you the advantages you get in combat. So, for example, every point invested in strength gives you +1 melee damage. You can also see all the bonus stats you get from investing points in your attributes, which is great. I honestly don't know why they didn't do this in the first game as well, but there you go. I couldn't see a lot of footage about the abilities, but it seems to me they work very similar to the first game. In order to learn them you need some exit, learning points, and the stat requirements are there as well. It will be interesting to see the exclusive faction abilities that we can learn. When it comes to the UI design in general, I think I like this style a lot more than Elex 1 UI design. Although it seems like Jax is not using the adjutor as in Elex 1 and the animation for opening up your menu is gone. Which is a shame because I thought that was a bit more immersive approach to designing the inventory and in-game menus. It kinda reminded me of the UI design in Dead Space. That game did an amazing job with the menu and the UI design. But yeah, I like the UI design and how clean it is. It seems to be a lot easier to see all the important info about your character. When it comes to the story trailer, there is almost nothing in there that we didn't know already. Jax tries to warn everyone about the upcoming invasion, but they seem to have bigger issues than that. This could feel a bit weird because you spent a lot of time gaining respect for Jax in the first game. You would think that his opinion would be more important and that people from his faction of choice would take him more seriously. Even though the whole alien invasion thing sounds like rambling of a madman. But it's not like he didn't have any proof though. It's yet to be seen how they actually handled all of that in the story. And that would be it pretty much. If you want to watch the whole gameplay stream, I will leave the link in the description. They only allowed them to stream the game for about an hour, which is not nearly enough for doing anything seriously in the game, obviously. But it was nice to see what we can expect from the game in general. Anyway guys, tell me your opinion about Elex 2 gameplay and do you think it looks better or worse? Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe for more RPG contents. If you want to support the channel in the long run, consider becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. You can get your name on the end credits as well as some other perks like early access to videos, Discord roles, my plans for future content, etc. etc. That will be all, and I'll see you in the next one.